They thought they were abandoned. At 2:13 p.m., silence replaced the roar of engines. No extraction helicopters, no landing craft. Only static on the radios. 9 U.S. Marines were left isolated, surrounded, with no planned way out. But this wasn't just bad luck. Half a world away, new tensions ignited. Newswire reports announced that the United States has just sent another warship to the Middle East, the guided missile destroyer Delbert D. Black, joining a rapidly expanding naval force now operating near the Strait of Hormuz and Gulf waters. At the same time, senior Iranian officials issued a chilling warning. They say that any American military action, no matter how limited, will be considered the start of a war. The response, Iran insists, would be comprehensive and immediate. These developments weren't background noise. They were seismic. In the Marines' earpieces, that meant only one thing. Command priorities had shifted. Where once rescue was imminent, now discussions in Washington were dominated by global strategy. Threats from capitals thousands of miles away had pushed local rescue to the back burner. Their orders were clear at first. Hold position. Extraction inbound. Now no one was confirming that extraction. Radio checks went unanswered. Tension mounted with every second that ticked by. Lieutenant James Reaper Hawkins crouched behind a crag of shattered stone, watching heat waves shimmer off the desert rock. "We have a destroyer moving into position," he muttered, more to himself than to his radio. "That means they're planning bigger things, not a quick rescue." The Marines knew only too well what this could mean. The decision-makers in Washington were preparing for a much larger confrontation, and right now this tiny element of 9 men was suddenly no longer the top priority. The possibility of friendly fire, diplomatic restrictions, and global calculus was now part of their battlefield. Across the region, fleets were repositioning. Aircraft carriers, jets, missiles, all reflected in the Marines' pensive eyes. And somewhere above it all hung the Iranian warning that even a single American strike would be treated as the start of war. A warning that now echoed in the thoughts of every Marine still holding their ground under open sky. The silence lasted longer than anyone expected. At 2:19 p.m., the Marines tried again. "Command, this is Reaper Actual. Radio check." Only static answered. 9 Marines. Pinned in open terrain. No confirmation. No extraction window. And above them, the sky was still clear. That was the most unsettling part. Because when things were about to move fast, the sky never stayed quiet for long. Back in Washington, the situation was changing by the minute. Intelligence briefings now revolved around the Middle East, not this isolated pocket of ground. Analysts warned that Iran's statement wasn't posturing. It was a red line. Any U.S. military action could trigger a regional war. That reality reached the Marines not through headlines, but through delay. At 2:27 p.m., a fragmented transmission finally broke through. "Reaper, stand by. Situation developing." No reassurance, no timeline. Lieutenant Hawkins exchanged a glance with his team sergeant. They both understood what developing meant. Resources were being pulled elsewhere. The Marines adjusted their positions, spreading out to avoid being fixed in one strike. Ammunition was checked again, water rationed. No one spoke more than necessary. At 2:33 p.m., enemy movement intensified. Vehicles repositioned. Drones buzzed higher overhead. Armed patrols began probing closer, carefully, testing reactions. They weren't attacking yet. They were waiting. And waiting meant they believed time favored them. One Marine whispered, "They think we're alone." Hawkins didn't correct him, because right now, they were. Another radio call went unanswered. At 2:41 p.m., intelligence picked up increased naval activity far from their position. Destroyers moving, air patrols rerouted, entire task groups shifting posture. That confirmed it. Global priorities had overtaken local survival. For the Marines on the ground, the message was clear without ever being spoken. No one was coming soon. Sunlight crept across the rocks, shadows stretching longer. Every minute without extraction reduced their options. They were no longer holding until rescue. They were holding until something broke. Diplomacy, patience, or the enemy's restraint. And restraint never lasted forever. As Hawkins tightened his grip on the rifle, he spoke quietly over the internal channel. Assume no rescue. We plan our own survival. That decision changed everything. Because from that moment on, the 9 Marines stopped waiting to be saved. They started preparing to fight their way through what was coming next. The first shot didn't come as an explosion. It came as movement. At 2:49 p.m., enemy patrols closed the distance. Slow, deliberate, confident. They weren't rushing. They weren't afraid. They believed the Marines had been abandoned. From their perspective, the math was simple. 9 men, no air cover, no extraction plan. The Marines watched through optics, tracking every step, every pause. Hold fire, Hawkins whispered, because firing first would change everything. At 2:53 p.m., a drone dipped lower, its hum slicing through the silence. It hovered, steady, mapping positions. That was the test. If the Marines reacted, the standoff would end. If they didn't, the pressure would continue to build. One Marine clenched his jaw, another adjusted his grip. No one moved. At 2:57 p.m., the drone pulled back. That was the answer the enemy needed. They advanced again, closer now. Vehicles repositioned behind cover. Heavy weapons appeared at the edge of sight. Not firing, just present. A message crackled through the radio. Weak, distorted. Reaper. Be advised. Regional escalation ongoing. Then nothing. No orders. No extraction window. No support. The Marines understood what that meant. While fleets shifted toward the Middle East and global leaders traded warnings, this fight had become invisible. Too small for headlines, too dangerous to ignore. At 3:04 p.m., the first warning shot hit rock just meters from their position. Dust exploded upward. No casualties. A message without words. Hawkins didn't hesitate. Contact. Controlled response. The Marines returned fire. Precise, limited, disciplined, no spray, no panic. Just enough to send a message back. The enemy pulled away momentarily, reassessing. That pause told the Marines something important. The other side still wanted them alive. Alive meant leverage. Alive meant propaganda. Alive meant time. But time was slipping. Sunlight shifted. Shadows lengthened. Every minute without decisive action tightened the noose. As the Marines reloaded and repositioned, Hawkins spoke quietly. They think we're waiting for permission. He looked across the line. We're not. Because at that moment, the situation crossed a line. This was no longer about holding until rescue. This was about surviving a fight that no one else was authorized to finish. And somewhere far away, as warships moved and warnings were issued, 9 Marines prepared to face what came next. Alone, exposed, and running out of daylight. At 3:11 p.m., containment failed. Not suddenly, not explosively. It failed because patience ran out. Enemy units shifted positions again, this time without hesitation. The probing stopped. The distance closed. Orders were clearly different now. They were no longer testing. They were committing. Vehicles rolled forward, engines loud and deliberate. Infantry spread wide, cutting off angles, sealing exits. Heavy weapons were brought into open view. Not aimed yet, but unmistakably ready. The message was clear: surrender or be taken. Lieutenant Hawkins scanned the line. Ammunition was still good, but not endless. Water was low. The Marines were steady, trained for this, but no one mistook the reality. 9 men against a force that believed time was on its side. At 3:18 p.m., a command vehicle stopped within sight. A loudspeaker came online. American forces, the voice said calmly. You are isolated. No rescue is coming. Lay down your weapons and you will not be harmed. The Marines didn't answer. They didn't need to. Hawkins keyed his internal channel. They want us breathing, he said. That's our leverage. At 3:22 p.m., the first coordinated push began. Not a full assault, a tightening vise. Infantry advanced under cover of vehicles. Angles disappeared. Escape routes vanished one by one. A second warning shot struck closer this time, then a third. The enemy wasn't trying to kill them. They were trying to break them. At 3:27 p.m., something changed. High above the battlefield, faint but unmistakable, a new sound cut through the air. Jets, not close, not yet, but close enough to be noticed. Enemy units paused. Radios came alive. Heads tilted upward. For the Marines, it was the first sign of movement beyond their immediate world. Not rescue, not confirmation, but proof that someone, somewhere, was paying attention again. Hawkins didn't smile. He didn't relax. Because half measures were the most dangerous thing of all. If command was still deciding, still weighing global consequences, still listening to warnings of war, then this fight could tip either way. The enemy resumed their advance, more aggressive now, as if racing a clock only they could see. At 3:33 p.m., Hawkins made a decision without waiting for permission. "All teams," he said quietly, "if they push inside 50 meters, we stop holding." The Marines adjusted their stances, fingers tightened on triggers. The sky above was no longer empty. And somewhere far beyond the battlefield, someone was about to decide whether 9 Marines were worth the risk of something much bigger. At 3:41 p.m., the decision was finally made. But it didn't come through the usual channels. There was no formal order, no announcement, no confirmation sent to the ground. Because officially, no one wanted to be responsible. The situation had crossed into dangerous territory. Warships were repositioning in the Middle East. Diplomatic lines were burning hot. Iranian officials were repeating their warning. Any U.S. military action could be treated as the beginning of war. Everything was being weighed, and 9 Marines were still on the ground. At 3:44 p.m., a single transmission cut through the static. Not command, not headquarters. A voice the Marines recognized instantly. Low, calm, direct. "Reaper, you are not cleared for extraction." A pause, then something unexpected. "But airspace will be temporarily unmonitored." The channel went dead. No explanation, no follow-up, just enough. Lieutenant Hawkins closed his eyes for half a second. That wasn't an order. It was permission disguised as silence. At 3:47 p.m., the Marines moved, not toward surrender, not toward escape. They shifted positions, forcing the enemy to react. Fire was returned, controlled, precise, just enough to create confusion. And then the sky answered. High above, fast and distant, engines tore through the air. Jets crossed the horizon, not officially there, not officially involved. Enemy units froze. Radios exploded with frantic chatter. The containment cracked. At 3:52 p.m., the Marines broke contact. Not cleanly, not easily, but deliberately. Smoke filled the space between them and the enemy. Angles disappeared. Time stretched. When the noise faded, the Marines were gone. No footage, no confirmation, no statement released, only unanswered questions. By sunset, 9 Marines were no longer on the ground. Officially, nothing had happened. Unofficially, a line had been crossed. Because sometimes wars don't start with missiles. They start with silence, deniability, and decisions that were never written down. And somewhere far from the battlefield, as leaders argued over consequences, one truth remained. Those 9 Marines were never abandoned. They were just rescued in a way no one could admit.